Alright, so we're looking at the 2019 May paper 1 for the CSEC General Mathematics exam. So let's look at number 1. So number 1 says negative 3 squared plus negative 2 squared. So what does negative 3 squared mean? That means negative 3 multiplied by itself. Therefore, negative 3 times negative 3 plus negative 2 times negative 2. So anytime we multiply a negative by a negative, we will get a positive. So therefore, negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And then we would have negative 2 times negative 2 as positive 4. When we add those together, we'll get 13. So just for your records too, negative times negative is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative. A positive times a negative is also a negative. But when we do a positive and a positive, we get a positive. All right, number two. So it says what number when added to 1/3 gives 2. So let's just try to put this in some kind of visual representation. So if I have one circle, I own this circle already. And inside of a next circle, I only have 1/3 of that circle. Only have 1/3. So I have 1 here and then this 1/3 here. So what is left in order for me to have a full 2 circles? We just have 2 items out of this 3 to have. So therefore, I have 2 out of 3 to obtain. So my answer is B. Now, if I wanted to give it a mathematical approach, in order to work that out, I would have to say 2 subtract 1/3. So 2 would be 2 over 1 as a fraction. I need to put it as a fraction in order to work this out. And in order to convert this improper fraction into a fraction, I need to multiply this denominator with the whole number. So 1 times 3 plus 1. So 1 times 3 is 3 plus 1 is 4. Therefore, I'll have 4 over 3. Now I cannot subtract these because I have different denominators. Therefore, what I need to do is find a common denominator, which would be the LCM. So the LCM of 1 and 3 would be 3. So 1 into 3 goes 3 times. So then I'll multiply 3 by this 2, which is 6. 3 into 3 goes once. And I'll multiply it by the 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. And what do we have to do? Subtract them. Therefore, 6 take away 4 is 2 over 3. 2 over 3. So that's the mathematical approach to this question. So number 3, it says 11.1 divided by 0.01. Now the problem with this here is that I have a decimal on both numbers. So what I need to do is look for the number with the most number of decimal places. In this case, 0.01 has 2 decimal places and this one only has 1. So I need to move the decimal place from 1, 2. So I just moved the decimal point, twice in order to make this a whole number. So this number would be 1 right now. Now I have to do it on the same number here in order to get it balanced. So 1, 2, which is 0 as a placeholder since there is no number there. So the decimal point would now come here. So we would have 1110 divided by 1. Now, essentially what we just did, it's like we are multiplying 100 to both digits, which would ensure that when we divide them, they are the same. So then 1110 divided by 1 would give me 1110. Therefore, my answer is 1110. All right, so the next question here. Number 4. So if you look at this, it says 12% of a sum of money. So 12.5% of a sum of money is $40. So I'm saying that 12.5% is the same as $40. Okay, so how can I go about working this out? I can find 12.5% of each of these digits and see which one gives me 40. I could kind of take like an intuitive approach and kind of try to do a little trick with it. Okay, so what if I could get this percentage to a recognizable number? So for instance, if I double 12.5, what would I get? I would get 25. So 25% is what 12 and a half would be if I double it. So if I'm gonna double that, that means I have to double the 40 as well to know what 25% is. So 25% would represent $80. Now, if I'm trying to figure out what is 100% of this value, so 100% of whatever value it was, I need to see how I can get 25% to 100. So in order to get from 25% to 100, I need to multiply by 4. So therefore, if I need to figure out the value that this is equal to, I need to multiply this 80 by 4. So what is 80 times 4? 80 times 4 is 320. 320. Okay, so therefore, my answer is $320. Number 5, we have a test. So this test has 80 marks. So you can get 80 marks in order to get full marks, or this boy, in this case, he scored 60% of those marks. How many marks did he score? So if he has 80 marks, we are trying to find 60% of 80. So if I want to find 60% of 80, I need to write it as a fraction, which is 60 over 100. This is how you represent 60% as a fraction. You put it over 100, and we multiply that to 80 over 1. Now, if you look at this, 10 could go into 100 10 times, and 10 could go into 80 8 times. We still have a denominator and numerator that have common factors of each other. So in this case, 10 could go into itself once, and 10 could go into 60 6 times. So now we're left with 6 times 8, which is 48, over 1 times 1, which is 1. Therefore, our answer is 48 marks. So he received 48 marks. Okay, so it says the square root of 181 lies between. Now, when we say square root, we are saying that the number, okay, whatever number is the square root of 181, when we multiply that number by itself, so let's just say that number was n. We are saying that n times n gives us 181. So if we are telling us that, that means that for this here, we have a number on this side. When we multiply that number by itself, if 181 lies between two numbers, it must lie between one of these groups here. So if I do 13 times 13 or 14 times 14, 181 must be between those. So the first thing I'm going to try is the smallest number that we have here. So in this case, the smallest number that we have here would be 9 and 11. So 9 and 11. 9 times 9 is 81. And we have 11 times 11, which is 121. So we know for sure that that cannot be the answer, because 181 is higher than two of these. Okay, it's higher than two of those. So let's try another thing now. So we have this 11 here again, which is 121, and we have 13. So now 13 multiplied by 13, we have 3 times 3, which is 9. 1 times 3 is 3. Then we bring the placeholder. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. If we add in these now, we're going to have 9, 6, 1. So 169. So when I'm looking at this now, 169, 181 falls outside of that. So it cannot be this answer here. Now, if I'm looking at 45, the thing with 45 and 46 is that this is way too big. Because if I double 45 alone, that's 90. And I would have to do 45 times 45. I just doubled 45, meaning 45 times 2. And I already got 90. So it's no way that this could be the answer. So this just leaves us with this answer here. Okay, so if I was just to work that out, let's just do the 14 part now. So 14 times 14. So 4 times 4 is 16. We put the 6 here, put the 1 here. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5. We put the 0 here. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. When we add this up, we have 691, 196. So 13 times 13 is 169, and 14 times 14 is 196, which 181 falls within. So therefore, our answer is indeed A. So number 7, which of the following sets is defined by x is an element of integers? So when we're talking about integers, we're talking about negative and positive numbers. And when we have this here, all this fancy thing means is that x reading right to left, x is more than or equal to minus 2. So x is more than or equal to negative 2. But it's also equal to or less than 4. So if x has to be more than or equal to negative 2, we already could eliminate these answers here. Because in order for this set to be correct, they need to include negative 2. So therefore, this is our answer. So just for the record, x is more than or equal to negative 2. We're talking about negative 2. We go up to 1, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. But we cap at 4. So we know that this here would have been our answer. All right, so number 8. So the answer for number 8 is, if Q is equal to ABC, how many subsets can be obtained from the set Q? It's going to be 2 to the power of 3. Now, how do I know that? I know that because for any number of subsets, we must have 2 to the number of elements in that subset, in that set. So in this case, we have 2. The number of subsets that we can have would be 2 to the power of 3 because we have 1, 2, 3 elements. So 2 to the power of 3 is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Now let's try to make sense out of this. So what is a subset? A subset, when we're talking about a subset, we're talking about a set that can be made from a bigger set, in this case ABC, which has elements of that set. It must have elements of that particular set. So if I was to pick from this or choose from this, what smaller set can I have? I can have a set with just A in it. I can have one with just B in it. I can have one with just C in it. I could also have one with A and B. I could have one with A and C. I can have one with B and C. And I can also have one with all 3 elements. Now the question is, what is a missing subset? So the missing subset is actually the empty set. Believe it or not, it's the empty set. Why is it the empty set? Technically, we can't say that there's an element in this set that's not here, which is the definition of a subset. We must have something that's, if it's not in this, it can't be considered a subset. But we cannot say that, this set doesn't have this. So because of that, that's why it's called a subset. It's kind of one of the weirdest things you might come across in maths, but that is the situation. However, these are the 8 subsets of this, in case you're interested. All right, so for this particular question, it says in the Venn diagram, NP. So what this means is the number of elements. This fancy N here means the number of elements in P is equal to 5. So we're saying that everything in P, this whole thing here, adds up to 5. Likewise, we're also saying that the number of elements, again, in Q would be equal to 9. It's equal to 9. But we're saying that when we put 2 of these together, so this set and this set, it would be equal to 10. How do I know that? Because of this. This says it's equal to 10. But from the onset, you would realize that, hey, come on, that doesn't make any sense. How is this 5 and how this is 9? And we have 10 here. How? Well, if you were to really think of it from a more, intuitive approach, we could kind of say that, well, if 5 plus 9 is equal to 14, it's no way that we should be above 10. 10 is like our cap. So what would that be? That would mean that the missing part would be 14 take away 10, which is 4. Now, there's actually a formula that you use to work this out. So even though this is our answer and we use an intuitive approach, I'll also show you the formula. So this is how the formula goes. It's usually like this. whatever letters we have. So in this case, P union Q, which is equal to the number of elements in P plus the number of elements in Q minus the number of elements in P intersection Q. And we having this so we could subtract any duplicates that we have to avoid having a situation like this. So they say that this here is 10. So it says that 10 is equal to the number of elements in P, which would be what? 5. And we have to add that to the number of elements in Q, which is what? 9. And we subtract that from some number that we don't know right now, which would be our final answer. So if you look at this, 5 plus 9 is 14. Take away something. Whatever that something is gives us 10. The only number that could be is 4. So therefore, based on that, it worked. So let's just do it from a visual point of view now. So we're saying that the intersection, or what's common between those two, would be 4. So let's just put 4 elements inside of here. Now remember, when we look at this here, it says that there are 5 elements in P. So we need to make sure that in this orange circle, there are 5 elements. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the 5th one. So let's do the same now for Q. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. How much do we need? 9. So we have 4 already. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now when we work this out, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's how we get a 10. So just in case that you were wondering how this works and why this was the case, this gives you a visual representation of what it is. Alright, so we're looking at this question here now. It says, which of the following sets is empty? So we have a intersection here, P intersection R, meaning prime numbers, intersection R. Do we have any numbers that are prime and also even? So just in case you forgot some prime numbers, let me tell you what some of the first few prime numbers are. So we have 2, 3, 5, we have 7, we have 11, 13, 17. Now, do you see any numbers here that are even? Yes, we have 2. 2 is even. So therefore, this cannot be the case because there is a number that is prime and even, which is 2. 2 is prime and even. Now the next question, Q intersection R. Next option, Q intersection R. So odd numbers that are even. There are no odd numbers that are even. You can't be an odd number and an even number. Every other number is odd and every other number is even. So if we had 1, 1 is a odd number, 2 would be an even number. The odd number would be 3, the even number would be 4. The odd number would be 5, the even number would be 6, and we go on and on and on. So they would never actually be common. So therefore, this has to be the empty set. Now, based on that intersection concept, this next question says if P is equal to 2, 3, 5, and 7, Q is equal to 2, 3, and 6, and S is equal to 2, 4, and 5, right? That's the elements in each of those sets. So it says P intersection Q intersection S. So in other words, what is common with P, Q, as well as S? The only thing that's common within those are the number 2. There's nothing common with all 3. So the answer for this has to be. So we're looking at this sets question here again now. It says in the Venn diagram, the shaded area represents what? So what is shaded? Everything outside of P is shaded, and we have something that we call that. If we have that, we call that P complement. And what does the complement imply? Implies that we are looking at everything outside of P. So this here is our answer, P complement, everything outside of P. Alright, so number 13. It says that if TT dollars over $6 is equivalent to $1 US, so we have $1 US, which is equal to 6 TT dollars, would be 15 TT dollars. So we want to know what 15 TT dollars would be, okay, in US. So when we convert in to go from US to TT, we would have to multiply. To go from TT to US, we have to divide. This is just standard stuff. So in this case, we would end up saying that 15 divided by 6 would give us the answer. Okay, so 15 divided by 6. I could just write this as a fraction, which is 15 over 6. So 6 into 15 goes 2 times. Remainder what? Remainder 3 over 6. 3 over 6 is the same as a half. So we basically have 2 and a half, which is the same as 2.5. But since it's money, we put the zeros. So $2.50. Another way you could have done that is you could have sit down and work out based on multiples in essence. So say for instance, if $1, so $1 was equal to 6 TT dollars. If I was to double that, it would be $12, right? So if I double that, what is that? 2 US. Okay, so I already put myself in a situation where I can't have this, neither this. It's no way that's the answer. But if you look at this, this says 4. So that's the next number I could try to compare since it's a whole number. And 2 double would give me 4 US, right? Now, if I double the same equivalent, so $2 is 12 TT, that means $4 must be double that, which is 24. Now, I'm not looking for $24, I'm looking for 15. So it can't be this, so I'm left with one option. Okay, so if $1 now is what $6, that must mean that 50 cents is what? Half of 6, which is $3 TT. So now that $3 plus the $2 here, so this and this would be $2.50 together, which would be 12 plus 3, 15. $2 plus 50 cents, $2.50. All right, number 14 now. Number 14. Now, number 14 says that we have $7,000 borrowed at a rate of 5% per annum. 5% per annum. So this just means per year. For 3 years, the simple interest is, so $7,000 borrowed at a rate of 5% per year. So we need to figure out what is 5%. 5% of 7,000, what is that? So we would say 7,000 times 5%, which is 5 over 100. So we would have to say 7,000 over 1. So if we look at this here, we could say that 100 could go in itself once. We would cross off like the 2 zeros here. And up here we cross off 2 zeros. So we will be left with 70 times 5 over 1. Okay, so 70 times 5 over 1. So 70 times 5. So 0 times 5 is 0. And 5 times 7 is 35. So 35. So we have $350, which we have to receive in 1 year. So in 1 year, we receive $350. But the question says we receive $350 for 3 years. And how do I know it's $350 per year? Because it says simple interest. Once it's simple interest, it's going to be the same amount each year. So therefore, for 3 years, it's going to be $350 multiplied by 3. And already based on our answers, you can see that this can't work, can't work, can't work, because $350 times 3 is definitely higher than that. So 3 times 0, 0. 5 times 3 is 15. Put the 5 here, put the 1 over here. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1, 10. So 1,500. So that's our answer. All right, so let's look at this last one here on this page. Dress which costs $180 is being sold at a discount of 10%. The amount of the discount. So we need to know the amount of the discount, not the discounted price, the discount. So what is the discount? 10%. 10% of the original. So that would be 180 times 10 over 100. So if we cross off some of these zeros, all right, so now we need to do it again. We are left with 18 times 1, which is $18. So that is the discount, which would be this. C. So this one says we have some land. we have some land. So the value of a plot of land, so say this was a plot of land, how much is it worth? Is $18,000. $18,000. So land tax, so tax for the government, is charged at a rate of 70%. $70. Land tax is charged at the rate of 70 cents per $100. What is the total amount of tax paid for the land? So if we are having to pay 70 cents for every $100, we need to figure out how many $100 are there in $18,000. And once we could figure that out, we just have to pay 70% or 70 cents for each of those. Okay, we have to pay 70 cents for each of those. You'll see why I keep calling it 70% in a while. So if I want to figure out how many $100 are in 18,000, so think of it as $100 bills, how many $100 bills we could get, and how many times we would have to take like cents from that, 70 cents, right? So 18,000 divided by 100, again, get rid of these, so we're left with 180. So what this is saying is that if we have 180, we need to find out how much times we need now to basically pay 70 cents 180 times, because this 180 means that we have 180 payments of 70 cents, right? So if I was to represent 70 cents as a fraction, I would have it as 70 over 100. So now you could see why I was calling it 70%, 70 over 100. And I have to multiply that to 180. So 180 over 1 would be it as a fraction. We can say 10 can go into 100 10 times. 10 can go into 180 18 times. 10 can go into itself once. 10 could go into 70 7 times. So now we are left with 7 times 18 over 1. So 7 times 18, let's work that out. So we have 18 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times 8 is 56. So we put the 6 here, put the 5 here. 1 times 7 is 7. Plus 5 is 12. So $126 would go to tax. All right, 126 in tax. All right, next question. 17. At the end of any year, a car is worth 5% less than what it is worth at the beginning of the year. So 5% less. Fancy word for that is depreciation. So it's depreciating. So if a car was worth $9,500 in December, that's the end of the year, then its value in January 2016. So January 2016 is before this. So we want to figure out before its depreciation. So at that point, let's just say at that particular point, it was what one of these numbers here. And what we need to do is figure out when did it drop from that. What was 5% of this to drop it to 9,500? So I'll show you two ways to do this. So one of the ways would be that I can find 5% of each of these numbers here. Whatever that value is, I'll subtract it from that number and see if it gives me 9,500. If that's the case, it would give me that answer. Now the one that I don't want to try first would be this, because it's kind of ending with, kind of like a weird digits that's going to give me funny questions and funny answers for multiple choice. Likewise, this one here as well, right? I want some easy, nice numbers first. So like 12,000 and 10,000. So let's try 10,000. So let's find 5% of 10,000, which would be 10,000 times 5 over 100. So if I work that out now, 100 could go into itself once, and then 100 into this goes 100 times. So then we'll be left with 100 times 5, which is $500. So now we have to subtract 10,000 by 500. So 10,000 take away 500 would be 9,500. So we know that this is the answer. Another way of looking at it is this here is 5%. So if it lost value of 5%, let's just say that at January 2016, it was 100% of its value. So that must mean that by the time it lost value of 5%, that means in December it was worth 95%. So that means if we were to compare it, we are saying that 95% or 95 over 100 would be equal to whatever it was worth after that drop, which is 9,500. So we are saying that right here, this here represents December 2016. Here also represents December 2016. And that goes over some value that's going to represent what? January. Right here is January 2016. And here also would be January 2016. But we don't know what it is. So we'll call that X. So what we do now is cross multiply. So 95 times X would be equal to 9,500 times 100. So that would be 95 times X equal to 9,500 times 100. That's going to give me 95X is equal to 950000. Now I need to divide both sides by 95. Bam, bam. Divide this by 95. So 95 into itself goes once. So I can kind of do this here, cross this 95 and put a 1 here. So I'm left with 1 0 0 0 0. So 1 0 0 0 0, which is 10,000. And that's the answer. So that was another way of working that out. Alright, so for this particular one, it says a loan of 8,000 was repaid in 24 equal monthly installments of $400. The rate of interest on the loan was, so basically someone borrowed $8,000 and then they had to pay every month $400 to pay it off. We need to figure out the rate of interest. But before we figure out the rate of interest, we need to work out what did they end up paying after 24 months, and then we need to figure out if it had interest, how much the interest was, and if we can do that, we can calculate the rate. So we have a loan of 8,000 repaid at 24 months with 400 per month. So 400 times 24, that's 400 times 24, so that would be 4 times 0, which is 0. 4 times 0 again, 0. 4 times 4, 16. So we have 0 now. So 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 0 again, 0. 2 times 4, 8. So then now we could add this together. So that's going to be 0 plus 0, 0. We add that 0. Add this 6. Add this 8 plus 1, 9. So 9,600. So that's how much was paid after those 24 months. So we can subtract that and see what we get. So 9,600 take away 8,000 would be $1,600. So this here, what is this? This is the interest. This here is the interest. So what we need to do now is work out the percentage of this, because it says the rate of interest, which means percentage on the loan. What was the loan? The loan was 8,000. So the interest on the loan, so that would have to be interest over loan multiplied by 100. So we can convert it to percentage. So let's work that out. We could have 100 go into itself once. 100 could go into this how many times? 80 times. So we're left here with 80. Let me cross that out so you can see. Now 80 can go into itself once, and 80 could go into 160 here. So I'm just looking at the 160 part twice. So then that would be 2 0 left, which is 20. So 20 times 1 is 20 over 1, which is basically 20. So in this case, 20 represents 20%. So this here is our answer. So the next one, number 19. Number 19 says a dinner at a restaurant was advertised at $60 plus 18% tax. The total bill for this dinner was what? We need to figure out what the tax is in order to figure out the bill. So therefore, we need to calculate 18% of 60. So if you look at this now, we have 100, we have 60, 10 could go into both of those numbers. So 10 into 100 goes 10 times, and 10 into 60 goes 6 times. Now I like this part here now, because now we have numbers that are not so obvious, but we have common factors that can go into these numbers. So for instance, 10. 2 can go into 10 5 times, and 2 could go into 18 9 times. So then now we are left with 6 times 9, which is 54, over 1 times 5, which is 5. So if we were to divide 5 into 54, we would get 5 into 5 goes once, 5 into 4 goes 0, but we have a remainder of 4. So if we add a 0 to that, which will give us a decimal point, 5 into 40 goes 8 times. We don't have any remainder, so we'll be left with just 10.8. We add a 0 for the money factor, so therefore we'll end up with $10.80 in tax. Now, we can add that tax to the $60. So it's going to be 60 plus the 1080. Now when we add those together, we're going to end up with $70.80. So our answer is B. So it says here, at a sale, each book was marked $3 off the original price. So let's say we just had some books here. So this book was $3 off, and they said that Daniel paid $46 for 2 books that had the same sale price. So let's put another book to represent 2 books that he bought. And remember what was said. It was said that these books were bought at the same price. So therefore, both of them had to have the same discount. So the book has $3 off for both books. But what did he end up paying? He ended up paying $46. So if he paid $46 for these 2 books, and they were the same price, that means we could split this price into 2 and figure out how much was for 1 in terms of a discount. So 46 divided by 2 is 23. So that means that he technically paid $23 for each of these. However, we have $3 off. So therefore, the original price would have been 23 plus the $3. The $3 that he got off. So therefore, our original price would have been $26. Alright, so we have a next question here. We're into algebra territory now. So it says 1 over 5x plus 2 over 3x. Now you know when you do fractions like this, usually we have one problem. We cannot add things like this because they do not have a common denominator. So if we had 1 over 5 plus 2 over 3, we could not add these because they do not have a common denominator. In this case, the only common denominator that we have here is x. That's a common denominator. So we kind of gonna pretend that we don't have the x here just to kind of help us work it out. So let's just put it here knowing that it should be here, but let's just hide it for now. So 5 and 3, the LCM for those would be 15, right? So 5 times 3 is 15. So 5 into 15 goes 3 times. 3 into 15 goes 5 times. So we could say 3 times 1 is 3, plus 5 times 2 is 10. Now, if we simplify, we could bring back that x, so we'll have 3 plus 10 is 13 over 15. And now, since we know that this was a common factor and was unaffected by anything here, we could say that this was 15x. So our answer would be this. So that's our answer. When 5 is added to a certain number and the result is multiplied by 3, the final answer is 27. What is the original number? Alright, so it's saying here 5 is added to a certain number. So let's just call this certain number x. So x plus 5 and the result is multiplied by 3. So this x plus 5 is multiplied by 3. The final answer is 27. Okay, so in this case now, I need to solve for x. What is the original number? X. So let's do this. So one of the things I could do is I could just start putting in one of these numbers to see if it works. So for instance, if I try the 4, that's the first thing I'm going to try. 4 plus 5 is what? 9. And then we have 9 out here. 3 times 9 is 27. So we know our answer is A. But just to show you all how we work that out. So you could say 3 times x is 3x, distributive law. And then we say 3 times 5 is 15, which is equal to 27. Now, to get x by itself, we have to get rid of this 15 first. We need to solve for x by getting it rid by itself, right? So we subtract 15 from both sides, so left with 3x is equal to 27 minus 15. So 3x is equal to 27 minus 15, which is 12. Divide both sides by 3. We are left with what? X is equal to 4. Alright, so 23. Now, if we are doing this, it says what is the value of x squared plus 3y? So x squared plus 3y over xy. So you say x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 2. We need to figure out what this is. It's light stuff for us, man. Light stuff. So we replace the x with 4. So then we'll have 4 squared plus 3 times y. Now y is 2, so 3 times 2 over x is 4, and 4 needs to be multiplied by 2, which is the value y is. So 4 squared is what? What's 4 squared? 4 squared is 16. All 4 squared mean is 4 times 4. And then we have 16 plus 3 times 2, which is 6. So 16 plus 6 over 4 times 2, 8. So 16 plus 6 is 22 over 8. Now I could try to reduce this to its lowest terms. Both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So 2 into 22 goes 11 times. 2 into 8 goes 4 times. So it's 11 over 4. Now, if I have 11 over 4, and I look over here, it's not here, that means they have it as a mixed number. So 11 divided by 4 is equal to 2. And if we do that, the remainder would be 3. Because 11 over 4 is 2 times. So like 4 plus 4 is 8. So 11 take away 8 is 3. And we have that over 4. So our answer is this. Alright, so for this one here, we have 24. 24. So 24 is, if x is an integer that satisfies the inequality 4, 2x, x. Okay, so for this one, all they did is make x by itself. So all we have to do is divide both sides by 2, all sides by 2. So once we do that, we'll end up with 2. We put back the same sign, and we're left in this case with what? X, which is less than or equal to 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So our answer is this here. So the sum for number 25 of two positive numbers p and q is 32. So p plus q is equal to 32. It says their difference is 12. So in other words, p minus q is equal to 12. What is the smaller number? Now, looking at this, I see I have a q here and a minus q here. So what I can do is I could add these together. So I could go like p plus p is 2p, q plus minus q. That's going to eliminate itself, so that's 0, which is equal to 32 plus 12, which is 44. So then now, if I divide both sides by 2, I'll have P is equal to 22. And if P is equal to 22, I can use this formula here. Substitute P with 22, so I'll have 22 plus Q is equal to 32. So to solve Q, I subtract both sides by 22, and I'll have Q is equal to 32 minus 22. So Q is equal to 10. So therefore, in this case, Q is equal to 10. So I could say that the smallest number has to be Q, which is 10. You could have also done this by substituting as well and try to replace one of these with the other one. So you make P the subject, put it into that, whatever you do to get the final answer. But I just decided to use this approach. So next question, we have 26 multiplied here. We have 3x squared times 2x to the power of 3. And by the way, if you want to see the other version of this, I did this before on TikTok. I'll put the link below so you could see. So 3x squared times 2x to the power of 3. So what we'll do is multiply the numbers. So 3 times 2 is 6. And once we have this, we add the powers. So the powers here would be x squared times x to the power of 3. So we just add in these powers. So our final answer would be 6x to the power of 5. So that's our answer, 6x to the power of 5. 27 looks like a theoretical question. It says two matrices A and B. So 27 looks like a theoretical question. It says A and B are it says here two matrices A and B are conformable for multiplication if. So in order for them to be conformable, if we do rows times columns, so let's put it here. So the rows of A times the columns of A multiplied by the rows of B times the columns of B, these two have to be the same. So in other words, the columns in this first row, the number of columns in this first matrix, has to be equal to the number of rows in the second matrix. So we just need to figure out which one of these sentences matched that theory. So the number of columns in A has to be equal to the number of rows in B. So the number of rows in A is equal to the number of columns in B. That does not match with what we have here. So it's not that. So the number of columns in A, okay, good, is equal to the number of rows in B, definitely. So that is the answer. So it says the determinant of the identity matrix is, first of all, we need to figure out what is the identity matrix. So the identity matrix is like this, 1, 0, 0, 1. So the identity matrix would be 1, 0, 0, 1, and the determinant of that identity matrix, in order to figure out the determinant, we always go this multiplied by this, which is 1 times 1, minus 0 times 0. So in that case, 1 times 1 is 1, take away 0. So 1 take away 0 is 1. Therefore, the determinant of the identity matrix is 1. So this one here, it says if the vectors P and Q are 3, 2, and negative 1, 4, so P is equal to 3, 2, and Q is equal to negative 1, 4, we need to work out what is P minus 2Q. So P minus 2Q. So what's P? P is 3, 2 minus 2 multiplied by Q, which is negative 1, 4. So then we'll have 3, 2, subtract this, negative 2. This 2 times negative 1 would be negative 2. And this 2 times 4 would be 4. So this is what we would have here now. Okay, so I multiply 2 by each of these. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2 times 4 is 8, sorry. So this should be 8. So 2 times 4 is 8. So 3 take away negative 2 would give me 5. And then 2 take away 8 would give me negative 6. So essentially what we did here is we worked out P, we knew what it was already, and we had to find out what is 2Q. So 2Q is basically 2 times negative 1, and then 2 times 4, which is 8. Then we subtracted, and we got our answer, which in this case would be this. Alright, so we have an interesting parallelogram here. We're in the vectors territory. So I'm looking at a parallelogram. If we know anything about a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal. So this here, if this is V, here also would be V. And if here is U going in that direction, here would also be U. So that's just to note. Now, what do they want us to do? They say that in the parallelogram, X, Y is U. So X going in the direction of Y is U. So we have to go in this direction to be considered U. If we go opposite to that, that would be negative U. Negative U. Likewise, XW is V. So X to W is positive V, or V as you see here. But if we're going the opposite direction, the sign will change. So WR, we want to work out what WR is. So WR, if I'm going from W to R, I could go either this way, or this way, but that's longer. So why not go this way? W to Z. So W to Z plus Z to R. Now what is W to Z? W to Z can be represented as U. How did I get that U? Remember, we did that earlier. We made sure we put where else would be U, where else would be V. Next one is ZR. So ZR is going opposite to V. So notice where my direction is. It's going down this way, but I'm going the opposite direction. So that's going to make it negative. And I'm going to R, which is the midpoint of YZ. So it's a midpoint. So it has to be half of this V. But notice I had the negative because I'm going opposite to where this arrow is pointing. Okay? So therefore I have to have this in some form of it. Now, do I have this here anywhere? Yes, I have this answer right here. So U, so W to Z is U, and then Z to R is half negative V. So this value here would give us that. So this question says, given that 1 milliliter is 1,000 meters, 2,500 milliliters in meters is. So if we're going from milliliters to meters, we would have, given that 1 milliliter is 1 over 1,000 meters, 2,500 milliliters in meters is, so if we're going from 1 milliliter to meters, we have to multiply. So we are going from 2,500 milliliters to meters. So if we multiply that, that would be the same thing as saying 2,500 over 1 times 1 over 1,000. All right, 1 over 1,000. So how do we work this out? So in essence, we try to do this here now. So we cross off that 0, this one as well, cross off this 0, this one as well. We're left with what now? 25 times 1, which is 25, over 1 times 10, which is 10. So we have here 25 over 10, which is the same thing as saying 25 divided by 10, which would be 2.5. All right, so let's look at this question here now. It says that the area of AOB is what? Okay, so it says here, the diagram shows a sector of a circle AOB such that AOB is 60 degrees and OB is R units. Now this here is a formula that comes on your exam. So basically, the area of a circle is usually what? Pi r squared. But this here is a sector. And in order to find the area of a sector, we have to find the proportion of this area. So that's going to be pi over 360 multiplied by this area, which is pi over r squared, sorry. So what is theta? This theta represents the angle. In this case, the angle is 60. So we would say 60 over 360 multiplied by pi r squared. Now this is the thing. We can reduce this. So for instance, if you look at it, you would know that 60 could go in itself once and 60 could go into this 6 times. If you didn't notice that, you could say we cancel these off and look what we have. So 6 into 6 is 1. 6 into 36 is 6. So therefore we would have 1 over 6 multiplied by pi r squared. And that would give you what? This. So the area for this here would be 1/6 pi r squared. Alright, so for this particular one, it says the volume in centimeters cube of a cube of edge 3 centimeters. Kind of ironic, it says 3 centimeters for number 33. So let's try to draw a cube. So if it's a cube, that means all sides are the same. So the volume of a cube is going to be length times width times height. So in this case, length times width times height, all of it is 3. So 3 times 3 times 3. So what 3 times 3? 9. 9 times 3, 27. So 27 centimeters cubed. So if we look at this, we have that answer, which is C. So the next thing says a square. The perimeter of a square is 48 centimeters. So we have a square. Its perimeter is 48 centimeters. So if it's 48, that means we need to figure out what each side is what, more than likely. So it says, what is the area in centimeters squared? Okay, so if we need to figure out that, we have to figure out how much one side is. So if all 4 sides are equal, we are saying that if we add a number by itself 4 times, it should give us 48. So what that means is we have to say 48 divided by 4, which gives us 12. So that means here's 12 centimeters, here's 12 centimeters, and so forth. So if we need to find the area of this, we just say the area of a square is what? Length times width. So in that case, it's going to be 12 times 12, which is 144. So our answer is 144. Alright, so this question says, which of the following figures not drawn to scale has an area equal to this? Now I'm looking at this, and this here kind of resembles a trapezium formula. So the trapezium formula is half a plus b multiplied by its height, and we have trapeziums here. Now the thing is, if we're having half a plus b, what is a? A and b usually represent the parallel lines. So if we have 5 and 4, we're saying that potentially the parallel lines going across would be equal to a here and b here. So whatever this is here, we have a height as well, which represents h. So based on this formula, our height should be 2. We should have parallel lines of 5 and 4. Either way, it could be at the top or the bottom. Now the only thing that looks close to this is definitely not this. We have this, but it's not a perpendicular height. So we don't have that. That can't work. We don't have a height there. This one isn't an answer either. If you look at this. But look what we have here. We have 4 here, parallel, as well as 5. And the height is 2. So our answer is this. Alright, so it says the area of a rectangle is 53.6. Okay, 53.6 centimeters squared. If the length is multiplied by 4 and the width is halved, the area would be then... So let's say we have a rectangle. So the area of this rectangle is 53.6. So we are saying that this area here had to be equal to what? Length times width. Now we have another rectangle, we are trying to figure out what the area of this rectangle is. But we did say that this area, what happened to the length? The length is multiplied by 4. So let's say we multiply the length by 4, so therefore the new length is 4L. This represents the length. And we have to multiply it by the new width. What is the new width? The new width is halved. So if we making it half, that would be the same as half times W. So that's our width. So I can try to simplify this. And if I simplify this, I will have 4 times a half. What's 4 times a half? Or in other words, half of 4. Half of 4 is 2. So I'll have 2 times LW. Okay, 2 times LW. So what is LW? We already know what L times W is from this over here, which is 53.6. So therefore our area here has to be 2 times 53.6. So if we was to basically double this, we would end up with 53.6 plus 53.6. 6 plus 6, 12. So we put a 2 here, put 1 here. 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 1, 7. 5 plus 5, 10. Our answer is... Alright, so this part of the question says that we have a diagram with a sector of a circle with center O. So if the length of the minor arc PQ, so from here to here, is 8 centimeters, what is the length of the circumference of the circle? So we're saying we have a circle. This little piece here represents 60 degrees. So from here to here is 8 centimeters. Now the thing is, we need to figure out what would the entire circle be. So we need to figure out how much of these pieces can fit in a circle. So if a circle is 360 degrees and this is 60, how many times can that go? It looks like it could go 6 times, right? Because 360 divided by 60 is 6. So we have 6 pieces with length 8 for each. So if we have all of them giving us 8, so 8 here, here is 8, here is 8, and so forth, we'll essentially be saying that 8 times 6 is the answer, which is 48 centimeters. So that's our answer. So it says here the area of a triangle. So let's have a triangle. It says the area of this is 30 centimeters squared and its base is 10 centimeters. So from here to here is 10 centimeters. So you know that the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So base times height divided by 2. So we need to figure out what the height is. So if the area is 30 and we know what the base is, so it's going to be 30 is equal to 10 times h over 2. We could put 30 over 1, cross multiply. 30 times 2 is equal to 10h times 1. So what's 30 times 2? 60, which is equal to 10h. Divide both sides by 10. We'll end up with 6. So then 6 centimeters would be our perpendicular height. So this one is telling us that we have a histogram and we want to figure out what is the modal age. So what does modal mean? All modal mean is which one would give us the highest or which one occurs the most. So in this case, the modal age is the one here with the highest, which is what? 7 years old. Alright, so this question wants us to find the median marks scored by the 200 students. So we have 200 students here, it says, who took a driving test. So this would be their mark and this would be the students. So if we want to figure out the median, we have to look for the middle of 200, which would be about 100. So that would be right here. So we need to figure out what that is. So we come up here, straight across, we hit this curve and then we come down. Alright, we come straight down. So that's like dead center here. About here would be 35. We're halfway between 35 and 40, which will be 37.5. So our answer is B. So for this part of the question, we need to get the interquartile range. So interquartile range. Now what is the interquartile range? So the interquartile range is equal to the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So the upper quartile and lower quartile, we need to figure that out first. So we know where the median is. Right here is the median. The median comes from here straight down. We'd worked that out earlier. Now the upper quartile would be the center of the median and the highest value. So between 100 and 200, the center of that would be like roughly about 150. So if this is 100, the halfway mark between here would be 150. So if here's 120, here is 140. As you can see, we're going up in 20s. So that means 150 must be between here. Okay, so it's center here. So I have to come across here now in the center, and then I have to come down. Okay, so if I'm looking at that now, I know here's 40, here's 45, and we are halfway between 40 and 45, which would be what? 42.5. Now, we need to find the lower quartile. So now the lower quartile would be the middle of 100 to the lowest point, which is 0. Halfway of that is like 50. We know that these going up in 20s again, so this is 60. So 50 has to be around here, in the middle of 40 and 60. And if you look from the divisions here, you can see that we just divided it evenly. So we come down here now, and look what we get. We get 30. So 30 would be our lower quartile. So upper quartile is 42.5 and 30 is our lower quartile. So if we subtract that, 42.5 take away 30, we'll end up with 0.5 here, 0. 2 take away 0 is 2. 4 take away 3, 1. 12.5. So our answer is 12.5 for the interquartile range. So we're going to need the same chart for this question. So it says if 38% of the students, so I'll use a different color now. If 38% of the students passed the test, what was the pass mark? So we had 200 students. I need to figure out what in the world is 38% of 200. So 38 over 100 times 200. So 100 could go in itself once, and 100 could go into 200 twice. Now I need to work out what's 38 times 2. So 38 times 2, if I double that, would be 76. Okay, so 76 of the students passed the test. What is the pass mark? Now, if 76 passed the test, that must mean that a certain number of them fail, which would have been on the lower end of the spectrum. Because remember, if we're going up this way, those that pass would have been the higher ones, the ones at the higher end. So the people who are 76 would have to be somewhere up here because they would have made the pass. So somewhere around here, when we hit over here, the pass mark would be somewhere across here. Okay, so we need to figure out where did the people fail start from. So we have 200. They would have started from 0, obviously, but where would they ended? So 200 take away 76 is equal to 124. So I need to look for 124. So we have 100, we have 20. If each of these represents 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we know that each of these lines represent 4. Because 20 divided by 5 is 4. So this is 120, 124, 128, 132, 136, 140. So therefore, 124 coming from here, we would hit here because we expect that everybody above this passed. Okay, so everybody above that passed. So likewise, once we come down here now, we know that everybody who got above this score would have passed. So the pass mark had to be 40. Alright, so this question says the following table shows the frequency of scores obtained by students in a test. So these are the scores, these are the number of students. Now the range of the scores is what we need to find. So the range is the highest minus the lowest. Okay, highest minus the lowest. So the highest score that you could have received was 10. So that would be the highest. And then the lowest would have been 2. So 10 take away 2 would have been the range. So 10 take away 2 is 8. Therefore, our range is this. Alright, so for this particular question, it says we have a two-way table which shows the mode of transportation to school on a particular day for a group of 200 students. So we had some people who got a bus, taxi, walk, and we have male and female. So a male student is picked at random from the group. So we're picking a male student. Okay, so this is the male student section right here. What is the probability that he does not walk to school on that day? So not walk to school. When we're talking about not walking to school, we have to look at what? I either took the bus, I took a taxi. Okay, we want to know that they did not walk to school. So the only way to not walk to school is catching a bus or taxi. We don't care about this because that would mean that it was walking. So what is the probability that he does not walk to school? We have 30 plus 50. So we have 80 potential boys. All right, we have 80 potential boys. But who are we selecting from? We are selecting from the group of male students. So a male student is picked at random from the group. We're looking specifically at the male students. Okay, so if a male student is picked from the group, it's going to be 80 out of 108. So we are picking a male from the group. Okay, so we have these male students and we have 80 that did not walk. Now the thing is, how I came with that is, what is the probability that he does not walk to school? We're looking specifically at the males, and not only that, we're trying to see which one of them did not take the bus. So that's 80 out of 108. Now there's a more advanced version of how this is calculated. That advanced version would say that we are looking at a probability that they do not walk to school, right? So if we're looking at school walking, we would say this means not, given that the person is male. So the probability of not walking to school given that it's male. Now how does this formula go? This formula goes like this. It's usually the intersection with not going to school and being male. So not going to school and being male, so W not intersection male, and that would be divided by the probability of being a male. So this is some advanced stuff here, right? Just for the record. So the condition is that not walk, which is an intersecting with male, so that would be 30, 50. So not walk would be 30 plus 50. So to clarify that, not walking and male would be these. So that probability would be 80 over the total, the overall, which is 200. And then the probability of being male, which is down here, would be 108 divided by 200. Now, if we were to work this out, it would be 80 over 200 divided by 108 over 200. So this is a probability that we call conditional probability. What we want is someone who did not walk, in other words, they car, the bus, and taxi, but they have to be a male. That's a condition. So this is what this is here. So then we flip this and we have 80 over 200 times 200 over 108. Remember, we leave this, change this to multiplication, and then we flip this. So therefore, this cancel out. We'll be left with 80 over 108. So that's just in case anybody has any concerns about this. We could actually prove it with this. Ask anyone to prove it based off of this principle. Now, let's look at how to reduce this. So 80, what can go into both of these? 4 could go into 80 20 times, and 4 can go into this here 27 times. So our answer would be 20 over 27. So for this one, it says, which of the following represents the graph of a function? So I'm going to just connect all of them. All right, so based off of these, when we do a vertical test, we're not supposed to hit any of the lines more than once. So let me give you an instance when that would occur. That would occur when we have straight vertical lines like this. So if I go and try to draw a straight line, guess what? It's going to cover the whole line. But if you think of it, it's hitting it at multiple points. It's hitting it at multiple points. Likewise with this one, the same is going to happen. All right. Now here, it works well with this. It's going to only touch here at one point, but on this line is going to touch at multiple points. So the only answer that we have here would be this one here. All right, so for this particular question here, now it says if fx is 2x squared minus 1, so fx is equal to 2x squared minus 1. So it's saying that we need to figure out what is this. So what does this mean? if you look at it, you can see there's a link. This x is the input and negative 3 is the input. So therefore, x is equal to negative 3. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? So this means everywhere I see x, I need to replace it with negative 3. So therefore, I'm going to replace this x with this negative 3, which is equal to 2 multiplied by x, which is negative 3 again, and that's squared minus 1. So we always work out this squared part first. I know people get confused and sometimes try to square this 2 as well, but no, we deal with these first. So this would be what? Negative 3 times negative 3, just like our first question, which is going to be 9, because a negative times a negative is a what? Positive. So then we're going to have 2 times 9 minus 1. So what's 2 times 9? 18 minus 1 is equal to 17. So our answer here is 17. Just going down to this one here now, it says a straight line cuts the y-axis at. So where is the y-axis? This is the y-axis. And where does the straight line cut it? Right here. So what's the coordinate for that? 0, negative 2. So it cuts it at 0, negative 2. So it says the equation of a line which passes through the point 0, 5 and has a gradient of 4 is. So we're looking at the equation of a line for figure 8. Now what is the equation of a line? It's y equal mx plus c. So that is a straight line specifically. So m, this refers to the gradient. Okay, and c is a y-intercept. So what is the gradient of this equation? It says the gradient is 4. The gradient is 4. So then I could substitute this m with 4. So therefore y is equal to 4x plus some intercept. Now the intercept here, we need to figure out what it is, and we could figure it out using these coordinates. Now these coordinates here, each represent a letter. So the first one always represents x, and the last one represents y. So what we're saying is that xy, our 0, 5, passes through whatever line this here is. So if this was a line, this coordinate falls along the line somewhere at 0, 5. So this x value here and this y value here, if we was to replace x with 0 and y with 5, since x in this particular point is 0 and y is 5, we could work out what a y-intercept is. So if I replace y with 5, I will have 5 is equal to 4 times 0 plus c. What's 4 times 0? That's 0. And that's 5. So 5 plus c, we'll end up with c being equal to 5. Now, if I was to re-substitute it into this equation, this one up here, we'll end up with y is equal to 4x from the gradient plus 5. Based off of this is our question here, our answer here. Now, just to add a little context to it, if we had a gradient here, we're saying that if this was a y-intercept, this is a y-axis, the y-intercept here would pass at the point 5. Okay, that's what the y-intercept means. All right, so for this one, it says the range of fx with x to the power of 3. That's what that says there. X is being mapped to x to the power 3 for the domain -2 straight to 2. So basically these values, we would have to put them in this formula. Okay, so it's similar to what we did earlier, but we have to do it for each value of x. So this is just a fancy way of writing it that they have here, but this is the same thing as this here like we did earlier. So I just have to substitute it with each value here. So I'll have here f -2, which would be equal to -2 to the power of 3. So that's the same thing as saying -2 times -2 times -2. So what's -2 times -2? That's +4. And +4 times -2 would give me -8. So my first output for negative 2 would give me negative 8. Now I need to try it for negative 1. So when it's negative 1, it's going to be the same thing, negative 1 to the power of 3. So that's negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And if I multiply that to negative 1, I'll end up with a negative times a positive is negative 1. So then now we have negative 8 for the first value of negative 2. Okay, so I'll draw it here kind of like a mapping to some extent. So if this was negative 2, our value gave us negative 8. For when it was negative 1, it gave us negative 1. Alright, so let's try it with 0 now. So when f is 0, so we just did negative 2, we did negative 1, now we're trying to 0. So the same concept, 0 to the power of 3. Good thing is that's 0 because 0 multiplied by itself 3 times will still give us 0. So we know that the 0 matches to the 0. So let's just do a little check here now. So we have a positive 8 here. So we know that's not that. We know it's not a 6 because our first value was a negative 8. If you look at this, look what we have. So our only answer left is this. So we could go and try to do it for 1. We would just get a positive 1. If we do it with positive 2, we get a positive 8. Okay, but since we know that we eliminated all of these already, we know that's our answer. So just in case you were interested, let's say we have 1 here. So that's 1 to the power of 3. 1 to the power of 3 will give us 1. And if we had 2 to the power of 3, that would give us 8. All right. Now this says the values of x for which y is equal to 4x minus x squared. So 4x minus x squared is this curve that we see here. So let's make it a little brighter. So the question is the values of x for which y intersects with the intercept y equals 0. Where does it enter with y equals 0? So where does y equal 0? So this is the y-axis here. We come down and it's equal to 0 down here. So where do you see the white line crossing with a red line? Right here and right here. This value here is 4 and this value here is 0. So it's crossing where x is equal to 4 and where x is equal to 0, which would be this right here. So all this question was trying to do is figure out where do these two lines, meaning the x-axis, or where y is equal to 0, intersects with this white curve here, or this parabola, which would be at the point where x is equal to 0 and x is equal to 4. Part of the question says, this part of the question uses the same concept, the same chart that we have here. So it says the coordinates of the turning point. So if you were to think of a turning point, being intuitive, where do you think a turning point would be? You can see I'm going up, then oh, look at that, I'm starting to turn back down. So that means my turning point would be right here. And what's the coordinate there? It's 2, 4. So 2, 4 would be my answer to that question. Alright, so number 52. Which of the following pairs of lines is perpendicular? So we're winding down. So for your syllabus, there are two things that you need to know when lines are perpendicular and when they are parallel. I did a video on that, so you could check it out. So when they are parallel, the gradients are the same. When they are perpendicular, one is a reciprocal of the other and opposite in sign. Okay, so before I get into what that means, let's look at an example. So if we have a gradient that's 1/4, the perpendicular gradient of that would be, we flip this, so it's going to be 4/1, but we change the sign to negative. Likewise, if we had another gradient, say that gradient in particular was -5/7, for instance, the perpendicular gradient to this would be, we change this, we flip it to 7/5, and it would no longer be negative. Okay, so this here now is positive, this here is a negative, this here is a negative, this here is a positive. As you can see, we flip and change the sign. Now, do we see anything here that's parallel? Definitely. This here is parallel because the gradient is the same. So remember, in order for us to appropriately know what is a gradient, we need to look for equations where y is the subject. We need to make y the subject. So this one here is another one where y is the subject. So we have y being the subject here, negative 4x plus 10. So if I try to make y the subject, obviously in this case, back from the equation earlier, y is equal to mx plus c, m being the gradient, c being a y-intercept. In this case, the gradient is negative 4. So ironically, did one like this. So the gradient, if I were to represent this as a fraction, it would be negative 4 over 1. Okay, so that's a gradient of this. So let's do the line that we are comparing with, which is 4y equal to x plus 1. So if you want to make y the subject, we have to divide both sides by 4. So as you can see here now, we would have y is equal to x over 4 plus 1 over 4 essentially. Now if you look at this here, the number or the coefficient next to x could kind of be thought of as 1 over 4. So then therefore we would have a gradient of 1 over 4. So in this case, m is equal to 1 over 4. And over here, it's negative 4 over 1. So as you can see here, negative 4 over 1, we had negative 4 over 1. We flip that, we get 1 over 4, change the sign. So we know that two of these here are perpendicular. Another way to think of it is, if we multiply them together, our answer should be negative 1 if they're perpendicular. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 over 4. That's going to give us negative 1. So C is the answer. So with this one in particular, it says what transformation is this? As you can see here, there's no enlargement, nothing happened, no translation, no rotation. Essentially this here is a reflection. Okay, so as you can see, we have a mirror line that was not placed there. We had to put it there for ourselves, but look, the corresponding points are exactly opposite from each other relative to that mirror line. So we know that this here is a reflection. We're winding down, people. We're winding down. We're getting there. So in the triangle, the value x is, so we need to figure out what x is. So this is an isosceles triangle. So x is what we need to find. And if it's an isosceles triangle and these two lengths are the same, that means that these two angles here must be the same as well. So all angles of a triangle, the internal angles, add up to 180 degrees. So we need to figure out what the missing one here is. So if I say 30 plus 30, 30 plus 30 is 60 degrees. And now this missing value x has to be 180 degrees minus 60 degrees. And that's going to give us 120 degrees. So here should be 120 degrees. And if we back check it, 120 plus 30 is 150. 150 plus 30 is 180. So therefore that is correct. So therefore our answer is 120. Alright, so with this equation, with this question here, it says the following transversal diagram that we have, lines A, B, and CD are parallel. So if they are parallel, that means these opposite angles here that we see here, these co-internal angles, are the same. So therefore they are equal. So if we had a angle here, if you look at it, this here is the same as if we had it here. Okay, notice if you look at this, you could kind of eyeball that they're the same. And then these opposite angles here would also be the same. So like here would be the same as this. Likewise, here would be the same as this. But guess what? This angle is equal to this angle, which is equal to this angle, which is equal to this angle. So we know that x is equal to y in a grand scheme of things. Alright, so for this particular question, it says the length on MO in centimeters is, so we have triangles here that are similar. So that means that the angles are going to be the same, but the lengths are going to be changing relative to the size change. So in this case, we have 6 centimeters here, and notice how we have 3 here, but look at the degrees remain the same. So this is like an enlargement of this. Now the thing is, they say they want the length of MO, so MO is right here. So using this concept, I know that here was 6 centimeters and here is 3. So that means that A to B and M to N, if these angles are the same and they are proportional, that means I did 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and got 3 centimeters. So likewise, for this length, I have to divide by 2 as well. So 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So in essence, this triangle just doubled for this one. If you look at it from the other way around, this triangle is just half of this one. So with this one here, it says the image of a point 1, 2 under translation is P prime, -5, -4. What is the translation vector? All right, so if we want to do this, I could show you the mathematical way, but I can also show you from a graphical way. All right, so let's plot these points now. We have P, which is 1, 2. So 1 on the x-axis, 2 here. So this is P. So where's P prime? P prime is -5, -4. So this is -5, -4, right? Which represents P prime. Now what we want to do is, we want to get from P to P prime. So I'm moving along the x-axis first, right? So I'm going from 1 to the 0 to -1. Notice I'm above -1. I'm going to go above -2, over -3, over -4, over -5. And how much did I miss? I jumped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because I'm going to the left, that's going to be -6. So from P to P prime is -6 so far. So what about going down? So I have to go down. So from the 2, I'm matching with the 1, then matching with the 0, then the -1, then the -2, the -3, and then the -4. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops. So I went 6 down. So that vector would be -6, -6. So therefore, the translation vector of this P to get to P prime is -6, -6. Now, if you wanted to do this through calculations, you could basically say that I had some translation. Okay, so whatever the translation was, I added it to P and I got P prime. So, do I have the translation? Nope, I do not. So this is A, B. So if I wanted to get translation T, I need to get rid of this P, put it on the next side, so then I'll end up with P prime minus P. So what is P prime? P prime is -5, -4, and I'm subtracting what? P, which is 1, 2. So -5 take away 1 is -6, -4 take away 2 is -6. So that's a mathematical way of calculating. And how I know it went like that, because it said the image of a point under a translation is P prime. So I have in a translation to P to make it go to P prime. So it's like T plus P equal P prime. So that's how I get that. Now, if you're looking at this, the question says that we have some triangles here, and we want to know what is the scale factor of the enlargement. So who is going to who? So it says triangle ABC is mapped onto A prime, B prime, C prime by an enlargement. So that means we're going from here to here. So what is the scale factor? So from here to here is how much? It's 1. But guess what? The size went from 1 to 2. So from 1 to 2. Even if you look at it from the long side here, it went from 2, and guess what? It went to 4. So what's happening to the factor? It is gonna be doubling each of it. So 1 times 2 gave us 2, and this 2 times 2 gave us 4. So the scale factor is 2. Because it's a positive enlargement, they're both on the same side of the center of enlargement. This here is the center of enlargement that they talk about here. Once they're on the same side, we know it's positive. Okay. All right, so we got 2 more questions to go now. All right, so for this one, it says a plane is flying in a direction of 45 degrees and changes course in a clockwise direction. So just moving from north, let's turn 45. So let's say somewhere here, use a different color. So here is what we had here. It was 45 degrees here. Now it changed direction clockwise. So we're going this way. Change the direction clockwise to what? To 135. So 135 may fall just under here. Here's 90. And 145 would be somewhere. 135 would be somewhere here. Okay. So this whole turn here, would have been 135. Okay, so we're trying to figure out what is the angle inside of here with that turn that the plane made. Okay, so you wouldn't even need to do this to get it, but that's just a visual representation of what it could look like if you wanted to see. So all you had to do was subtract this and you get the difference. You could kind of visually see how much this is already. So 5 take away 5, 0. Now 3, we can't do that, so we bring from this. 13 take away 4, 9. So the answer is 90 degrees. And just by simple observation, there's no way that it could be 270, because if it was going, it was facing 45 degrees and it turned clockwise at 135, obviously it's no way we're going to 270. It turned to 135, so how can it be at 135? And definitely 45 is much more than, if we have to turn from 45, we can't say it just turned 45, because that would just be 45 plus 45, which is 90. But our answer is this. So this here is the last question. It says, if x is 10 meters from y, so x is 10 meters from y, the height of yz in meters is, so this is the height we're looking for. This is the question mark right here. Now you see we have this angle here as 30. Now because this is a right angle, I know that this angle here is also 30. So we need to figure out what yz is. This is yz. Now if I'm doing it relative to this angle, I can call this the opposite. Now if that's the opposite, this bottom piece, what would it be? This bottom piece would be called the adjacent. This would be called the adjacent. Now if this is the adjacent, how did I know that? I knew that because this opposite one here, once it's opposite the right angle, it's called the hypotenuse. So if I know that the one opposite the angle is the opposite, and the one opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, that only leaves me with one choice, which is the adjacent. Okay, we only have 3 options when it relates to right angle triangles. So we have opposite here now. Let's clear this up a bit. We have the opposite here now that we're trying to find. But remember, we have the value here of 10. So opposite and A that we had is what? O and A. So we know that we have SOHCAHTOA. That's used to remember trigonometry. And this is sine, this is cosine, and this is tangent. We need to know which one of these come together, right? So when you look at it, who has O and A? O and A is 10. So then it's just how it is. The formula is set up the same way like this. So it's opposite over adjacent. So this angle here, in this case, is 30. So I could say tan 30 is equal to the opposite, which is what we're looking for, over 10. Now, if I was to write this as a fraction, it would be just over 1. I just cross multiply now. So tan 30 times 10 would be tan 10 tan 30, which is equal to the opposite of basically yz. So the question asks us for an expression for yz. So our answer for this would be this. Okay. All right. So hopefully this video helped you a lot. Hopefully it made things a lot clearer. Hopefully it was easy to follow and understand. And you can always go back to different questions to review and go over and catch a concept. So all the best in your exams. Stay focused. Stay locked in. Beast mode. This ain't no play man thing.